So I've got around with this desire to not exercise by using my iPhone to watch things at the gym. I'm watching The Americans at the minute, which is a TV series. That gives me about 45 minutes of cardio.
That's a good one.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello, my name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Jo is interviewing Siobhan McKeown. Jo was introduced to Siobhan by her husband, Siobhan's, not my dad, who was a friend of Jo's from when they were 14 and 15, so that's a long time ago. They haven't seen each other since they were about 18 or so, but have reconnected in recent years via Facebook, and Wendy, as Siobhan refers to him, shared Siobhan's book release on Facebook earlier this year. Jo knew she had to read it and get Siobhan on the show. Siobhan is a writer, editor, event organizer, public speaker and free software contributor and advocate. She is director of people operations at Human Made, an internationally distributed web development agency. She's written extensively about technology, web development, work and free software. Her book, A Life Lived Remotely, Being and Work in the Digital Age, was published in March 2018 by Repeater Books. She's also the author of a book about the history of the WordPress free software project. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Siobhan McKeown of Human Made and author of A Life Lived Remotely, and there is another connection, which is that Siobhan's actually married to a very old friend of mine who I knew 30 years ago, and in fact I haven't seen him probably for about 25 years, so it's really lovely to have you on the show, Siobhan. And also in the meantime, this is our second recording because we had a bit of a problem with the internet the first time, and in the meantime I've managed to read your book, A Life Lived Remotely, which of course was particularly interesting because I sort of vaguely knew who you were talking about when you were talking about your husband.
Yeah, I mostly said nice things about him.
So again?
I said I mostly said nice things about him.
You did, exactly. So that was good. And then, although on Facebook recently, I think he and you had a discussion about him being a bit grumpy, and I thought, I recognise that man.
He is a very grumpy man. I'm sure he'll love me saying that.
He's very grumpy in a very philosophical way, as he always has been. So,
Yes.
So tell us a bit more about you then, and what you do, and a bit about your book as well.
So I am currently Director of People Operations at Human Made, which is a fully remote web development agency. We are 63 people now, and we're in about 15 different countries. Everybody works from home or from a home office or from a co-working space, and I guess my general responsibility is making people happy, making their lives easier when they work remotely, because that comes with all sorts of challenges, which I write about in the book. So the book, A Life Lived Remotely, is about my experience of working remotely, and also about how the internet has changed how we work and changed our lives. So it uses my journey from when I first started working online up until when we resettled in the north of England as a frame, just for looking at all of the different issues to do with remote work and the internet.
I found it particularly interesting, obviously partly because I have worked from home for a long time, obviously the bit about D, as you called him, yes. But also both of your backgrounds, and obviously you as the author particularly, it was the whole philosophy thing, wasn't it? I think, is that your degree? Yeah. So yeah. I recommended the book to a friend of mine who talks very much about the future of work, and I recommend it as much as anything else, because I just think, as you say, you've used your story to make it sort of autobiographical, which sort of connects people who like those sorts of books, but you've really put a lot of sort of deep thought and real sort of big thinking within it as well, and so I found it fascinating and not quite what I probably expected when it was recommended on Facebook initially by your lovely husband.
Good. I'm glad you liked it. And people keep saying that it's not what they expected. So I don't know how I could have done a better job of conveying that to people, because people are like, oh wow, I read it and it's just not what I thought it would be.
Yeah, I think it's just because of that sort of autobiographical bit. You sort of expect it's just going to be a story about somebody's life, and I think, and actually I don't know about it needing to be better conveyed, because I think that's part of the joy of it. It's the depth that comes out that you weren't expecting, because you thought it was just going to be about somebody's life, if you see what I mean. Not that people's lives aren't deep, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, my background is in philosophy, and it's something which I still have an affinity for and think about, and occasionally read philosophical books. And I've always thought that philosophy, when it just stands alone, it's just, an academic discipline, but you can use it to really think about the world and to look at the world around you and try and think more deeply about things that are happening, not just to you, but to the world. So, I think that's an important aspect of philosophy, and it was nice to be able to use it in this context of looking at my own life and the internet and work.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start talking about why you do what you do, because that does touch on some of the concepts from the book as well, because you went through a bit of a journey in terms of working from home and now working for an organisation but remotely, and with other people working remotely. So why do you do what you do in the way that you do it?
So I do my job because I love the company that I work for. I really love the company. I wouldn't say that I'm really passionate or excited about developing websites for people, but I am really excited about the company itself and like what we do. And I think that work is changing. I mean, the world is changing so fast, even in the past 10 years. And I just enjoy thinking about that. And I think it's important that we do think about that and the repercussions for our lives. And I like to use what I'm thinking about to help to improve the working lives of everybody at our company who is dealing with the same challenges as me. And, that's why I wanted to write about it as well, is I felt like I'm someone, like there's many people who were just placed to be, we're at this transition period where we've gone from traditional jobs to this sort of world of remote working or freelancing or, relying very heavily on the internet for work. And it's completely transformed our lives. So I really wanted to write about that and put a lot of thought into that and write a book about it.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I think you're right. I think my own sort of interest and skills, it's probably the right time for me to be here on this, as you were just sort of starting to touch on that. We've got all the people who are coming through as digital natives and all that sort of stuff, and you are younger than me, but
not by much.
we have gone through the transition from the very beginning to wherever we're going to end up. So it's an interesting period in the world and with technology, and we've been lucky to be able to see the whole bit. We've not just come in halfway through sort of thing, have we?
Yeah, I think it's comparative to industrialization and mass transport, like Victorian periods, where things were changing really fast. So you have mass transit systems and new means of communication, and people were completely astonished at how the world was changing. And a lot of the things that people were saying are similar to what people are saying about the way the world is changing today. So there's definitely similarities there to do with if you read some old quotes from Victorians, it's, we're just overloaded with information and people don't know where to put their attention. And it's just so similar to what people write today.
And yet there's a sort of a thought that says that this is different and it's never happened before. But as you say, and you do talk about it in the book, that it is more of the same. It's just different. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's things that repeat in history. I mean, it's similar to what's happened before, and it's unique in its own way. But it's always interesting to look at how things are repeating. And every generation thinks it's like living at the end of time, and it's living through this huge transformational period. And for the person living through that, of course it is. But if you look at the whole swathe of history, it's only with hindsight that you can tell if it actually was.
Yeah. So what about prioritizing your work and your life, bearing in mind you work remotely, and also because you talk about this quite a bit in your book? I a lot of it sort of rang true for me, the things like procrastination and being distracted and all that sort of stuff. So tell me a bit more, because I think you've reached a different stage, and I'm sure you, like me, you'll say, well, I still do procrastinate and I still do let things get in the way. But how do you get that balance, given that you live at home and you've got children and you're working for an external organisation, but you're doing that all from a home environment?
So one of the most important things that I do, and I think give advice to people about doing, is creating boundaries. It's so important to create boundaries between when you're working and when you're not working, so everything else that goes on in your life. And there's lots of different ways to do this. So I have a home office, but I actually have an office outside the home as well, which I go to, because when I've got kids around, it's just, if they know that I'm in the house, they want to see where I am and annoy me. But it's not just going out. You can establish temporal boundaries. So, I start work at 9 and I finish work at 4 or 5, and you focus on work. It could be something like putting on a pair of headphones, so that when you've got a set of headphones on, that means you're working. I used to do that in coffee shops. I would sit with headphones on with no music, just that it would help me with focusing on what I was doing. I would say the thing that's focused my mind the most is having kids, because when you've got kids, like, your time is so precious. They take up so much of your time. So when you're not, you can't let your work drag on into the evening, because you've got to finish by a certain time in order to get the kids dinner and put them to bed. But I wouldn't recommend having a kids as a cure for procrastination.
No, neither would I. But as you say, it does tend to provide that focus. It's like I was saying to you at the beginning of the call, it's the summer holidays at the moment, and your children aren't at school yet, are they? So you're not sort of dealing with that. But and Ellie's 12 now, so she's a lot more self-sufficient. In fact, she's just popped off to do some pottery painting with our French students, so a lot more self-sufficient. But even so, yesterday we went and did a treasure hunt in Canterbury, because we need to entertain the French student, and obviously, Ellie needs to enjoy her holidays. And I went to bed last night thinking, and I didn't do this and I didn't do that, and I've got so much to do. And then I had to sort of remind myself that actually spending that time yesterday was really valuable and fun, and all that sort of thing, and that I will always get done what I need to get done somehow.
You do, yeah, and it's so easy for work to take over the rest of your life. And I write about this a lot in the book, and that happened to me. I was working all of the time, and I guess in the end, it's just a job, and jobs change. I've been through various different jobs, and things that seem really important at one point in time don't necessarily always seem as important a few years later. But there are some constants in your life, which is like your health and your family, and all the things that you love and you surround yourself with. And I think it's so important to not let those things slide, because they will remain throughout your career. They will always be there. So you need to work on them too. Yeah.
So from a sort of day-to-day point of view, in terms of getting things done, how do you manage those tasks? You obviously, as you say, you've got your boundaries, when you're working and when you're not. How do you then make sure you get done what you need to get done?
Well, our team, I work on the operations team, and we work in 2-week sprints. So that kind of works quite well for us to conceptualize our work. It's fairly arbitrary in that, we choose what we assign to the sprint and everything, but we aim to get various things completed within a 2-week block, which is quite useful, because we have we use GitHub for tasks. So we have like loads and loads and loads of tasks, and then we assign ones to work on in that sprint and aim to get them finished by the end of that sprint, which helps with prioritization, because it means you know that the other ones are there and you will get to them, but you know exactly what you need to focus on for the next couple of weeks. And I'm someone who works much better with deadlines and pressure. So I like having pressure on me to get things done. I like having deadlines. If they come from someone else, it's much better than if they come from me. My deadline for finishing my book was having a baby. That was a pretty good deadline. I had to get it finished before the baby came.
That's a pretty definite deadline, although vaguely movable, but not too much.
It wasn't very movable, though. And then in terms of big tasks, so whether it's writing a book or writing a strategy piece or whatever I'm doing at work, it's breaking that down into really small, manageable tasks that are very actionable. So if I have something big to do, I'll break it down into a list that is things that are like research, whatever I need to research, write however many words, or write on this topic. And so I break it down to be very, very granular, because I get a lot of satisfaction from ticking things off a list. So when I tick them off, I feel really good about it, and I can see the progress of what I'm doing as well.
So I'm interested in the sprint stuff. Presumably it's come about because you work in a tech company and you know, the website stuff and everything else. How have you aligned your people work, if you like, the stuff that you're doing with that sprint structure? Because that I could see that some people wouldn't do that the organization would be doing that, but actually stuff that wasn't about delivering to a client wouldn't be put into the same sort of structure, but you clearly have done that. So how does that work?
So we have a 2-week sprint. I have my list of big jobs that I'm doing on. So I'll have, like, I'm trying to think, I've got an engagement survey I need to run. I'm running some workshops. I'm redoing how we do onboarding. So I'll have all of those in our task repository, basically. And then at the start of the sprint, I'll say I'm going to do this and this over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to forget about the other things. So I need to prioritize things. I need to know what the top priorities are for the company. And then I just focus on those things for 2 weeks. And that gives me a deadline, and it gives me the focus that I need. So I'm not thinking, I've got to do this other thing as well, and this other thing. Yeah. And it's not really a natural fit for the type of operational work that I do and the rest of my team, but actually it has really helped with focus. And yeah,
I guess you're then fitting in with the sort of reporting timescale structures that everyone else is following as well, which, as you say, creates that sort of deadline too. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it works quite well.
Yeah, I like the granular thing. I'm very like that as well with tasks. In fact, I popped over to my friend who lives opposite earlier with some screen wipes, and she said, "Oh, well, that's one job done," as she cleaned her screen. I said, "Is it on a to-do list? Because if it isn't, go and write it down so you can tick it off."
Exactly. Yeah, no, I feel really good about it. I love it because we use GitHub, which is it's a code repository tool. It's not really for doing issues, but because we use it across the company, we've been using it. And I just love opening a ticket and then closing it straight away because I've done it.
Yeah, brilliant. So what about tools and apps then, as a tech person for all these years? What would you say your top tools and apps are?
I use so many.
Just the top 25 will do.
Okay. Well, where do I start? The absolute top is a notebook and a pencil. That is like my absolute top tool. Like, I do write down lists of what I'm going to do, and I find that physical presence of that list to be much more motivating than online tools. I mean, again, I write about this a lot in the book. The tools I have been through, I couldn't even count them all. Because I love setting up a new tool. I love setting up a new complicated categorization system for all of my work. So I've been through a lot, but ones that have stuck, other than my notebook and pencil, there's a Chrome add-on. They're called add-ons called Mindful. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh no, I haven't. No.
So if you open I don't know if you use Chrome, but when you open it, it's got a new tab. So what it does is it creates a little to-do list in that tab. So every time you open a new tab, it shows your to-do list, and you can tick things off on that. So that's quite nice.
Oh, yeah.
And I use that for.
has nice pictures, but also has links up to my to-do list. So yeah, similar sort of concept. Yeah,
Momentum.
cool.
I must check that out.
Yes, check that out. It's got lovely photos, and you're a bit of a traveller, aren't you? So that will appeal to you.
Yeah, I might try that. I love switching apps. Another one I use at the minute is Bear. Don't know if you know that.
No? Did you say Bear?
So it's Bear, BEAR.
Okay.
I have started using that, I guess, in the last 6 months. It's a writing app, basically. So I used to use apps like Byword and IA Writer, which are just basically very basic text editors where you can like write notes. And I much prefer to using that than like a word processing program. But I was finding I'd have 50 things open, 50 notes open on my screen. And Bear is like one app where it sort of keeps them on. You can use tagging and things like that to organize them. So that's really nice. It just means I don't open my computer and have a million windows open. It keeps all of my notes and stuff in one place, which I really like.
Yeah. Okay.
And then other things, that's probably the main things that I use. I'm just going to have a look on my phone. I use Slack every day. I mean, it's so common now to use Slack. That's probably, and Zoom and things like that for work. But yeah, I would say that for my own personal work. Oh, and Scrivener. I wrote my book in Scrivener, which I love, which is a really good.
Yeah. You see, there's a real writing theme here, isn't there? Pens and paper. A way of writing.
That's what I do. I have got like a bunch more sort of HR and culture tools now, but they're more company related. So. Yeah,
cool. So what about other people helping you to get things done? So, you know, in work and also at home, are you good at delegating, at sharing, at not taking everything on yourself?
Yes.
Or not?
I love delegating. It's really important. The person who helps me the most is Darren, my husband. Yeah. Your friend from childhood friend, let's say.
He had many roles in our family. He drove for my dad. He probably hasn't told you that. He drove for my dad when he lost his driving license for a good few months. So he probably knows my dad more than me in the end. But
he is a stay-at-home dad most of the time, and he does a few other things, writing and editing now too. But like if he wasn't doing that, it would be very difficult for me to do my job. And also impossible for me to write the book. Like I got up every morning. I'm most productive in the morning, like first thing before breakfast. So I would get up every morning at 6:30, 7 o'clock to write for an hour and a half, and he would get up with our son. And I couldn't have written the book without him.
No.
And then, work. So most of the stuff I do now, I'm like the only person doing it in the company. Because we're only 63 people. We're not huge, so it doesn't require that I have a big team to do it all.
Yeah.
Prior to doing this role, I used to run our events team. And I delegated as much as possible. I think delegation is so important. I think if you want to ever get into a leadership role or management role, you need to know how to delegate well, and you need to be comfortable delegating. And that can be difficult. So when I started out having to delegate to people, you know, if you're a competent person, you're good at your job, it can be hard to pass things over to other people, especially if they do things differently to how you do them. Yeah. So you need to get to the point where you accept that other people may do things differently, but they'll probably do them just as well as you would do them yourself.
I was going to say, it's difficult for us control freaks in the world to hand these things over. What about from a sort of remote working point of view, you know, the sort of differences there are in managing people that you can't see? How do you see that playing out in terms of delegation? Not necessarily your own delegation, but your experience of leaders in that sort of environment.
You have to really establish trust with other people on your team if you want to delegate with them, and that comes. there's an additional barrier when you work remotely with people to establishing trust, because you're not getting that time to spend with
Yeah.
people. So we do find that like meetups and company retreats and stuff are really important for establishing those kinds of relationships. I think you also have to build a company culture which really empowers people to take ownership of things and to get on with things and to fail. Like you need to create an environment where failures, it's okay for people to get things wrong. They'll learn from it, they'll move on, and they'll do it differently next time. It's, that's all part of like running a business or working. So I think that's really important. So yeah, at a company level, you have to put a lot of work into really building a culture where there is that trust and there is that psychological safety for people.
And it's that thing around performance as opposed to sort of being able to see it, sort of thing. It's end result, isn't it? A lot of leaders, feel confident because they sit next to the person that's doing the work because they can see them, but actually they're probably not looking at the sort of output any better than they might if they weren't sitting next to them. But that gives them some sort of security blanket that the person's working because they're sitting at their desk. But actually, when you can't see them, you've got to be very much about what they're supposed to be producing, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, often it doesn't matter how the work gets done. It's like what has it achieved the results that you wanted, and if it has, like however the person did it doesn't really matter. So I think that's a really important aspect of working remotely. It's not about putting a suit on and going into an office every day and reporting what you do to the minute. It's about what the work that you're actually producing, and so we focus on that a lot rather than what people are doing every day.
Yes, yeah. So what about self-care? What about how you look after yourself? Is it something that you think about, you do well? How do you keep healthy and look after?
I don't think I do it well enough, and I'm trying to get better at it because I now realise how exhausted I feel running around after my kids. It's really hard at the minute because I get up in the morning with the kids and then I work and then I look after the kids and then it's like bedtime, and so fitting in exercise and things like that are quite hard. But before we're away at the minute for 6 weeks while our house is being renovated, but before I went away I was exercising regularly, either like at lunchtime or sometimes in the evening. I think sleep is really important, so I go to sleep by about 10 or 11 every day. I also I wish I'd have a daily nap. That would be nice. Something I try to do, I'm not always completely successful at, is I am aware that if I read anything to do with work with an hour or two before bed, that I'll be thinking about that when I go to sleep. So I try very hard not to like look at anything to do with work after about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I think that's really important. Otherwise, I just find I can't sleep very well. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I've dreamt about this work thing, which is not important. So that is, I think, is important. Yeah.
So do you schedule, like you say, doing sort of exercise during the day or whatever? Do you particularly schedule that in? Because I know with myself, I sort of think I should do it in the morning because then it's out of the way and I won't think of an excuse not to. But then on the other hand, I think, I'm not so productive in the afternoon. Maybe I should go walking in the afternoon. But then I'm always too busy and I think of 25 reasons why I can't possibly leave the office now.
Yeah, I've got around with this desire to not exercise by using my iPhone to watch things at the gym. So I'm watching The Americans at the minute, which is a TV series. That gives me 45 minutes of cardio.
That's a good one.
I only watch it at the gym. So if I've not gone to the gym, I don't get to see what happens. So that is,
brilliant.
I have to do something like that because I don't enjoy exercise.
Yes,
I
understand.
I do like watching TV.
I convinced myself that listening to podcasts when I walk was going to incentivize me, but I've just decided that I don't like listening to the podcast that much anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing I used to watch is reality TV, which I would never watch at home, but I love it. So I watch it at the gym, and it feels like I'm doing this virtuous thing, and I'm doing this thing that I don't generally have the time to do.
Lovely. So what about relaxing? You said sleep is important and not reading things before bed that will keep you thinking. What other things do you do to If you have any time, you have got 2 young children. Let's build that one in.
Yeah.
You go to the beach. I know you go to the beach. I see the photos, the lovely photos.
I take the kids to the beach. That's not relaxing at all. Yeah, it's relaxing once I go to bed. So I guess the 2 things I do at the minute to relax is, I read a lot. I love reading, so
yeah,
that's a big thing. And then I, after many years, have taken up the piano again. So I have, as soon as the kids go to bed, I practice for about an hour and a half every day. And that just helps me switch contexts from like work and kids to just like downtime, and it gives me something to focus on. And I really like that. It's just completely different thought processes that are used for practicing piano as there is to everything else that I do. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it at the minute.
How quickly the practice comes to fruition, isn't it? I don't play the piano very often, but I often do it when I'm waiting for the kettle to boil. But I do notice the weeks where I play, every day, I get better very quickly. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. It's I'm surprised by how quickly I've picked it up again.
Yeah.
I've got loads of work to do, but I'm just really enjoying being able to play it and learn new things. And so that's great.
It is funny. I was saying to someone the other day about the concept of practice. I was going, it works. You do get better very quickly. It's like, who knew? Practicing is a good thing.
The thing with writing, if you write every day, you get so much better as well, which I'm not doing at the minute. I'm not writing every day because I have children.
I was going to say, I'm saying that like I've ever gone running at all, and I haven't, so I'm agreeing along with you, but no, it's not my thing. So what about learning and improving yourself? You said you like reading. I'm guessing that forms a part of it. What sort of things do you do to move things forwards? This is where you get all philosophical.
I'm trying to think about that. I think the most improving thing that you can do is to read fiction. I think fiction is just a wonderful thing, which, you're not just reading about something, but you're actually experiencing the world through, the protagonist or whatever the world the author's created. And I think there's so many different types of fiction as well. I read so widely, everything from like science fiction to literature to crime novels, or all sorts of different things. And there's so many different perspectives on the world. And so I think I think if everybody read literature, it would be a great thing for everybody to do.
Have you got any tips for people finding different things to read? Because I read a lot, but I tend to read, thrillers or historical sagas, and that's about it. I don't tend to read other stuff because I haven't partly got the time, and because I don't have a system, I suppose, for finding it.
Yeah, I've never read a historical saga and would like recommendations there. Actually, I've been thinking, I've not read historical novels, so I would love to know. So there you go.
My top tip on that one is the Jacobite Chronicles. They're about 6 books, and it's got a bit of crime and thriller built in, but it is actually about the obviously the Jacobite times. So that's my top tip on that one.
Sounds great, because I love a good series. It's like 6 books.
Yeah, it was on Unlimited at Christmas, and that's what I read through the whole holiday.
Nice. I use Goodreads a lot. So I will stalk people I know on Goodreads and see what they're reading and think, that looks quite interesting. And then I add it to my own list. What else do? I ask Dee for recommendations because he reads a lot too. And sometimes I go to Facebook or Twitter and ask people for things. When I ask people at work, it's really asking for personal recommendations. Although a lot of the time it's based on the cover and the blurb. I'll just read the blurb.
You're not supposed to judge a book by its cover.
I know, but I do. It's terrible things to do, especially since I have a Kindle, so I never actually see the cover really anyway. But I do look at the pictures on Amazon and go, that looks like my type of thing. That doesn't look like, which is a terrible way to judge things.
But then in some ways, that's probably why you get to read different types of books, because you're using a less I don't know what the word would be, but you're choosing for reasons other than genre or whatever, and that's possibly why you get to read around a bit more, maybe. I don't know. She says putting a positive spin on it for you.
I do like lots of different genres, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually the thing that annoys me the most is bad writing. So if it's good writing and it's any genre and it's got a good story, I'm generally happy to read it.
So like me, you would give up a book if it was rubbish, would you? That's what I do now. I never used to.
Yeah, definitely. Life's too short for terrible books. Why would you spend weeks, trips, and it stops you from reading something else which you might love?
Yeah, opportunity cost. Yeah, good point. Good point.
Exactly.
So what about routines, rituals, habits? Have you got specific things that you do to make sure you get stuff done, or to make sure you are going to bed on time, or whatever, that sort of thing?
I think I've mentioned both of them already. So if I'm writing, like working on a big piece of writing, I will get up in the morning before anybody else in the house and go into my office and work for about an hour and a half. Find that I'm most productive in the morning, and also I agonize about writing, and I'm a terrible writer because I'm like, oh, I hate writing. Writers always say stuff like this. So I like to get it done at the start of the day, and then I have a good sense of achievement as well. It's like I feel like I'm being productive already. And then my current routine at the minute is to wind down, is to practice the piano. That helps me switch off.
Yeah.
And I always read when I go to bed. So even if it's half
too.
a page and I have to pass out, but I have to read to go to sleep.
Yeah, so do I. I was thinking the other day, it's ridiculous. Sometimes I've had a few late nights because I've been balancing the summer holidays and getting stuff done, and I end up in bed at like 1:30, and I'm a night bird anyway, so that's not unusual, but I know that I've got to get up too early the next day for going to bed that late, but I still have to get the book out, otherwise I can't sleep.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm exactly the same. I have to, and even with the kids, when I was up with my 1-year-old, or when she was 6 months old, I would still read even after my eyes were glazing over. I'd be like falling asleep. Middle of the night time.
And then you have to reread it the next day because you can't actually remember what you read.
Exactly.
So what about on a day where things don't go right? What do you do?
Things often don't go right. I mean, especially when
you're going to say, define what go right means.
Well, yeah, I am wondering that. But when you've got little kids, I'm sure you understand, anyone with little kids, is like things often don't go right because you're at the vagaries of them. So if I'm at home trying to work and there's like meltdowns in all corners, that is quite stressful. And I'm really lucky that the company I work for is just so understanding. So if I've got a problem like that, I'm just like, I just can't work today. And they're just like, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I really, I do have the luxury of being able to just, to really step away and focus on things like that.
Yeah.
I tend to, if there's a problem at work or anything like that, I tend to try and just deal with it head on. I find that, especially when you work remotely, if problems fester, they just become much worse because there's no face-to-face time. So people are putting so much of their own like prejudice and perceptions into what has happened, and they're just sitting by themselves and wherever they are noodling about it. So I always think it's better to deal with those sorts of things head on.
Yeah, I guess you get that sort of thing where when you're in the room with someone and annoyed, then you can't keep that up for a long time because it's obvious. Exactly. But when you're separate, it's quite easy to keep up if you try really well. You don't even have to try really hard.
No, you don't have to try hard, but then it becomes toxic, not just for you and the relationship, but for everyone around you. So it's really important to deal with those things.
Yeah. So what about a day where you end the day knowing you've had the chance to live more, and that's how what I describe as of getting to do the things that you want to do, not the things that you feel you should do or you have to do. What have you done? What does your day look like?
So I've got up in the morning and I've written, and it's just been one of those days where you just write down and it feels like you're not even writing yourself. It's just like coming out of you. It's like coming from somewhere. And I've done that in the morning, then I've had breakfast. Then I've probably gone scuba diving. Spent morning scuba diving, which is my favourite thing to do.
And you talked about that in the book, I remember. When you were off travelling, that's when you learnt to do that, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, we did. We basically spent 6 months diving almost every day, and it was amazing. Wow. It's an incredible thing to do, but it's very meditative. So you're so focused on being under the water, being completely switched off and just floating, that it just completely abstracts you from the rest of the world. I just absolutely love it for that reason.
That reminds me of Michelle Smith, who was on an earlier podcast, and she's a mountain leader, and she had just done the I think I can't remember what it's called now, the Yukon something thing in Canada, like snow trekking for X amount of days on her own, and it's funny because that's the sort of the same thing that she was saying, that just that absolute silence, nobody around, on her own in nature, clears her head. And that's what you're sort of saying
absolutely.
as well. It's interesting.
Exactly, yeah. And it's crazy that you have to take these extreme measures to completely, get away from the world. But I mean, it does, because I guess because you're doing something which is a little, it takes focus and concentration. It could be dangerous if you're not completely focused on what you're doing. So that does tend to focus the mind. So I would be doing that for most of the day, and then I would eat something amazing, because I love eating. Eating is like the best thing in the world. And I would probably crack some really difficult piece of music that I've been trying to play as well. That would be a good day.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Siobhan. It's been so lovely to talk to you, especially since we haven't met and we haven't really had a conversation. And there is that connection, and we will meet one day, even though we're
one day
in the country. We used to live near each other as well, didn't we?
I know, we never got it together.
So how can people find out more about you and connect with you and get the book and all that sort of thing?
So the book is on Amazon and other bookstores. If you search for A Life Lived Remotely, which is probably easier to spell than Siobhan McKeown. You can find me on Twitter, Siobhan P. McKeown, and you can find me on my website, SiobhanMcKeown.com, which is not updated very often. Or you can find out more about Human Made at our website, which is humanmade.com.
Lovely. Thank you. Thanks for joining me.
Great. Thanks very much.
All this information is available in the show notes on the website. If you go to powertolivemore.com / in this case 75, then you'll get to see those notes. And just a quick reminder that I'm in the middle of my challenge for September, which is all about avoiding burnout and fatigue. And if you go to joedodds.com / challenge burnout, then you can sign up for the challenge. It isn't very challenging. You just get a daily quick email from me with a link through to a blog post with some tips and strategies for you to use to think about avoiding burnout yourself and reducing fatigue. And also there's a Facebook group so that you can share how you're finding the challenge. So please do pop over there, joedodds.com / challenge burnout, and or feel free to share it with your friends and family who you think may benefit from it. And again, the link for this show is powertolivemore.com / 75, and we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.